Yeah. I just want to hear from everybody, maybe 1 or 2 sentences on what you thought and what could be. Just give us like one futuristic idea. Like if you had to do something in this space, what would you do? So right now we're starting with exposure notification, but imagine if you can do closed loop testing. Imagine the same app can also show people that you have been tested and you have a health verification. So you can go to your favorite restaurant or watch a movie or go to a stadium or go to classrooms and things like that. So health verification is big. The next after that is the efficacy of test. Because right now there's so many COVID-19 tests, but nobody knows which one works. There's PCR tests, there are antigen tests, there'll be home tests. It's a complete Wild West. Nobody knows what's going to work. Companies are spending billions of dollars acquiring those COVID-19 tests in advance, but they don't know if they're going to work, right? And even if they work in laboratory setting, are they going to work for real? Because many of them require, refrigeration, or they need skilled nurses to kind of do the right swab and so on. So they might work in the lab, but they may not work in real world. So kind of getting that right is difficult. And then there's, of course, vaccination. Vaccine is going to be a complete mess because even for flu shots, which, as you know, has very little value, they're designed for viruses from previous year, not the current year. So the flu shots are just, shot in the dark. We barely get it right, their dissemination. And to get 7 billion people vaccinated over the next 4 years or so is going to be a complete mess as well. I mean, even I was reading an article that even the cargo, airline cargo, to get the right things in the right place, the logistics for that are actually very complicated, right? So there are many, as I said, don't play piano on the Titanic. There are amazing problems to solve, if you're in computer science. But I want to hear from you. Just 1 or 2, like as crazy, as wild an idea as you can throw, all the way to launching a spacecraft and, start populating another planet because we're done on this planet.
So I just quickly looked up the smartphone penetration in Bangladesh, my home country. Turns out that the mobile phone penetration is very high. Even in 2018, it was 97% plus. So I'm guessing today it would be even higher. But the smartphone penetration stands at 18.5% in 2019. Right. So, I'm assuming that smartphones will, typically have all the Bluetooth, etc., where the feature phones perhaps might miss out on the Bluetooth and these technologies. So, that 80% threshold, we talked about that can drastically reduce the pandemic, right? So it just might not be practical in that sense. I think back in April, me and Hassan, we tried to talk to the local mobile phone service providers in Bangladesh. Apparently, they do have a lot of mobility data in terms of which cell phone tower you're taking your service from. So if you move from zone A to zone B, they'll have the tower level information. But they were reluctant to use that information because they said, hey, it takes too much time to process through all the terabytes of data. They'll just not work on it, right? So perhaps the data is there even without smartphones. The mobile companies do know it. Perhaps better algorithms, algorithmic innovations can allow them to work on that data.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Right. And you just defined your life's mission. That's a good problem statement. Let's go do it.
And Ramesh, I'm sure you felt it with, I'm sure you tried to convince Indian government as well, try to incorporate contact tracing. It's probably a similar problem there as well.
Yeah. I was on the founding team for the Indian app called Arogya Setu, and similar challenges there. So, but every country has its own cultural issues as well, right? So let's go solve the problem for feature phones. It doesn't have to be smartphones. So we have a team called, if you go to our Slack, you'll see there's a team called COVID out of Africa, out of South Africa, and they're using a QR code based solution for that. But you can take this and implement that in Bangladesh or any country that has lower smartphone penetration and do much better.
Anybody else? Any other crazy ideas?
I want everybody to present at least one crazy idea. Come on, you can do it. You watch enough science fiction.
One of the thoughts that I kind of had, well, 2 of them, they're not necessarily as crazy as you might expect them, but just in terms of the format of the app in itself. So I know for a fact that a lot of joggers or people who bike in the mornings actually do not take their mobile phones with them, but rather just take their watches with them. Whatever smartwatch version they have. So I was just curious as to whether there were plans on looking at sort of a watch-based app as well, in addition to the physical phone-based app itself.
Yeah. I think wearables, Bluetooth tags, especially for enterprise workers who are not allowed to take cell phones inside the facilities, or joggers or children. Like Singapore just launched a wearable for all the children, Bluetooth-based, a tag. But if you can make it privacy preserving, if you can do machine learning on it, and things like that, these are just fantastic problem statements.
Right.
And we have to solve them in the next 6 months, next 1 year.
Sorry?
And we have to solve them in the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Even elderly people who don't like to use phones, right?
Mm-hmm. True, yeah. And so one of the other things that I was also thinking of, well, especially in the lines of people who do not have these smartphones, is there I was just trying to look up NFC and stuff like that, but then I realized that the range is very low.
Right.
So do you know if there is any alternative for Bluetooth, some kind of any other communication format?
Yeah, so UWB is becoming very popular now, ultra wideband. It's actually, I believe iPhone 12 or even iPhone 11 has it. So UWB is just ultra wideband, so it uses a very large, very low power but wide bandwidth, and that gives you very good directionality and distance, as opposed to Wi-Fi, which is omnidirectional at 2.4 gigahertz, and the distance attenuation doesn't follow a nice R square because it depends on the orientation and so on, because the bandwidth is just off the order of a few tens of megahertz at 2.4 gigahertz. So yeah, I think UWB is already used for asset tracking. So if you go to a warehouse, they use ultra wideband signals to figure out what their distance is from two transmitters, and they can track your assets by using a small tag on top of it.
And would this potentially be, sort of implemented in other, small scale places as well? Do you think there is a possibility of that?
I mean, the cost hasn't come down like the cost has come down for Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Like asset tracking tags are still, a few tens of dollars each, right? I forget exact economics behind it right now. But yeah, I mean, so absolutely, write a paper, write the first assignment, write a paper on, different RF spectrums, or it could be ultrasound, different RF spectrum for this problem. Don't play the piano.
True. I want to hear from Jeannie He, who is in Singapore right now. I'm sure they have a very different contact tracing app. So do you want to share?
Please, yeah.
You're muted, Jeannie.
We have a few versions of a contact tracing app. I think more than one at this moment.
When?
But the one everyone is required to use is this that is using QR scanning. So before you enter any public spaces, you have to scan the QR code, and then you have to key in your ID information, and then you have to submit your entry. So I believe that your entry, your location trails is all recorded.
I know, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But in Singapore, you're safe.
Yeah, that's true.
The government is very believable.
For elderly people as well as children, they have this tag that emits the blue lights. So they wear it on their on their hand or wrists, that is automatically scanned before they enter any public venues or locations. Yeah, so that they don't have to use the smartphone to scan the QR code.
Yeah.
But I believe that everything is recorded. I mean, yeah, there's not much privacy. You're talking about you're giving out your location, actually details your trails, your history.
Yeah.
But it's for the common good, I guess.
Yeah, that's what matters, the common good. I'm just joking.
Any other crazy ideas for Ramesh? Let's hear from James. James, you haven't spoken today?
Yeah, so in terms of just testing overall and how it wasn't immediately tests were immediately available. They were immediately accessible. And one of the solutions for that was trying to do that at home, testing at home, where you get a test mailed to you, prick your finger, and then mail the test out. But that still takes a large amount of time. So maybe looking at how, in the same way you can study Parkinson's remotely, you can study just COVID symptoms, or trying to understand through an app maybe different attributes or symptoms of COVID remotely.
Yeah.
There's a workshop next week on audio analysis for COVID. So just look, as you're having this phone conversation, looking at your voice characteristics, can you predict whether you have COVID or not? So.
Yeah, that's right.
So I know that Ramesh has young children at home, so I want to respect his time. Any other question before we let him go?
No, I want to hear a few more crazy ideas. Come on.
I just had one idea. So learning about how different countries and states have responded to COVID, I feel like all of them essentially had access to all these great technologies that like either tech companies had come up with or research institutions had come up with.
Right.
But there was just this lack of political will to implement these ideas. And I feel like in the end, the only thing that changes political will if politicians know that people want something and they will remember if their voice wasn't heard. So I wonder if like we could make an app in which politicians could or like governments could like put out like a problem statement, for example, how do we contact trace, and then like certified organizations like research institutions or tech companies can put their like what's it called solutions there, and citizens can vote in a either with a privacy preserving manner. Either maybe there's even a place for blockchain in that app in which we can make sure people are not double voting, and like there's like yes, something like that. And so there's like people's voices being heard, and they also know that what their government is exploring.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's a good trade-off between wide participation at the same time being effectively audited through some kind of a public ledger. Very nice.
And I think like it's also like for now it's for COVID, but later on it could be for a lot of societal issues.
I mean, that's the point. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think like Switzerland has this form of direct democracy. Obviously, it's not like online, but I think it works really well there.
Yeah. Now, Victor, the point is that things you do during COVID will be there forever, but now is the time to make them happen, because now is the best time to change the policies, deploy it, get acceptance, all those things. So now is the time to do it. I mean, I feel sorry for the this generation, graduating now and so on. It's just one of the most difficult times. At the same time, you can do something about it.
Xiaofei, do you want to share something? I know your family back in China, so it's a very different perspective from there.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, I'm thinking about how, like, what design can be done to motivate people to do such self-report. For example, for the doctor chatbot in our university, like I receive the email every day, and but I'm not very motivated to report and to answer those kind of silly questions. So I'm wondering like what mechanism, or like maybe gamification, or maybe other like other mechanism can be used to make such really simple design better, to make it effective for people to be more willing to report such data and to make things, make situation better.
I have a question. So it's more of I was thinking for the class project, and especially when we are talking about COVID. So my collaborator, Anis, and I collected this pretty unique data set that we especially we have interviewed people during COVID, students during the lockdown, where we collected their search logs, their YouTube history, and their location history. Well, I mean, but by location history, we are looking at Google Maps. So we have the history of how they interacted with the Google Maps app.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about doing something with it. It's just, so I would, because like, you know, this is different from contact tracing in the way that contact tracing is real time, let's put it in this way. And it detects the incident immediately and then reports it back. But if we look at, it's kind of like if you identified certain keywords in, for example, like I search for symptoms possible to see, like I'm worried about if I got affected because I went to the grocery shopping today and I saw someone coughing at me, right? And then I typed that online. Then, you know, if we look back, I also see that, you know, I also interacted with the Google Map today and looked up certain places that was a hotspot in the database. So I was thinking about like what this kind of, you know, one-time collected longitudinal data would be like. Any thoughts on how to utilizing this kind of data for like mitigating any aspect, like any problem related to COVID?
Yeah. What do other people think? I mean, it's a lot of good ideas there.
Sounds kind of similar to the Google flu tracker, where they can kind of predict where flu hotspots are going to be based on people typing in symptoms. So I think Google has been doing that. And I think I read something that they're trying to do it for COVID as well, trying to look at search history in different locations and see if it's predictive of different hotspots.
Yeah, I think it's more like, because there's a time lag, right? It's less of a alarming system, but more of a kind of to see the trend or try to validate if something actually happened. And probably it would be useful in forecasting.
Right.
I have one crazy idea, which is Microsoft did some work on, like if you check in, if you share your location, they have an algorithm to determine the value of the check-in. So imagine if you're checking in certain places, that would have some value. And so you can get money for checking in. So that's the motivation behind this work. So imagine if I have a phone, if I'm using contact tracing app to self-report some of the symptom or share some location data through the app, it can give me some incentive as to how much point or money am I accruing. So it's like a good deeds. As I'm checking in, sharing data, I get more data points as I'm doing a good job. So something along this line to give people incentive.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think thinking about that behavioral economy, behavioral science aspect of it.
Kind of going back to what you said, Facebook has 1,000 engineers looking into how can I have a user spend 1 more minute, right? So it's kind of do something similar here to allow or encourage people to share this.
I have a similar idea where you could automatically, by looking at the face, determine whether or not face mask is used, and then have some sort of metric that comes up their phone that like shows them in real, like what their effect is on the virus, whether it be that 0.8 factor, like what is happening by them not wearing that mask versus wearing that mask. To have like that positive feedback for wearing the mask, because some people forget why they're doing it, and that's maybe why a lot of them don't wear them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I need to sign off. This is wonderful. If you join the Slack, just introduce yourself with just one sentence, and then just write your interest. Hey, I want to create, an incentive model, or I want to think about, Rayan, like I want to think about using it on, non-smartphone users, or like I want to work on wearables and so on. And there's a huge community. And then maybe for your class project, you can just take people from this community saying, hey, I'm a full-fledged grad student in computer science, but I'm one of you, and I can actually guide you, because others may be working part-time, but you could be doing this. So you think of that place also as a recruiting tool to build a project.
Great. Let's all thank Ramesh for his time today and all the wonderful insights.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.